71 days alone adrift, he should have been dead. His skin was burnt raw by the merciless sun. His lips cracked until they bled, and his eyes stared into nothing but an endless horizon of water. 71 days. 71 endless, merciless days adrift on the open sea. No rescue in sight, no land, no hope. Only silence, waves, and the slow unraveling of a human soul. It began with a storm. Not the kind you see in movies, loud and dramatic, but a sudden, creeping violence that came out of nowhere. One moment the sky was calm, the next it tore open, black clouds twisting above like giants ready to strike. He was on a small boat, never meant for such rage. The waves rose like mountains, tossing the vessel as if it were nothing but driftwood. He fought to hold on, his hands blistering on wet ropes, salt stinging his eyes. But nature was merciless that night. The boat shattered, swallowed whole by the sea, leaving him clinging to a lift raft, alone in a universe of water. The first night was terror. The wind howled, the ocean slammed against the raft, and the darkness felt endless. He thought it would be over before it began. He whispered prayers into the wind, not sure if anyone was listening. His chest heaved with exhaustion, his mind already beginning to fray. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. Every splash of water felt like death coming closer. Day 1 bled into day 2. The sun returned, but it was no blessing. It was a curse. Heat wrapped around him like chains, burning into his skin. He had no fresh water. None. His tongue swelled. His throat became sandpaper. He thought of drinking the ocean, but he knew salt water would only kill him faster. Still, temptation whispered every time he looked down at the rolling blue. He stared at it with hatred and desperation, his own body betraying him with thirst so violent it felt like madness. He searched the raft for anything, any scrap of survival. A small knife, a few hooks, a broken piece of plastic. Nothing more. Food? None. Water? None. Only the endless sea mocking him. And so began the war. Man against time, against hunger, against thirst, against his own mind. By day 3, his lips were so cracked they bled when he tried to speak. His stomach gnawed at itself. His thoughts drifted back to home faces, laughter, the smell of warm bread, the sound of rain against a roof. Memories stabbed him harder than hunger. He whispered names into the wind, afraid he would forget the voices of those he loved. Alone, surrounded by billions of gallons of water, yet dying of thirst, he realized the ocean was not water at all. It was an endless desert, blue and merciless. At night, silence swallowed him. Stars stretched across the sky, cold and distant, reminding him how small he was. Waves slapped against the raft like the ticking of a clock, counting down the hours of his life. He heard things in the dark, whispers, voices. He thought he saw shapes in the water eyes glowing, fins cutting the surface, sharks. Always circling, waiting. He knew if he slipped, even for a second, the sea would devour him without hesitation. On day 5, he broke. He screamed into the horizon, his voice hoarse, tears burning his cheeks. He begged for death, begged for the nightmare to end. But death did not come. Only silence, only the sea. And then the rain came. It was sudden, violent, blessed. Black clouds above, drops hitting his face like salvation. He stretched his arms wide, opened his mouth, and drank. He caught the water with his bare hands, licking it from his palms like an animal. It tasted like life itself. He cried as he drank, sobbing with gratitude, the sound swallowed by thunder. For a brief moment, hope returned. He thought, maybe I can make it. But hope is a cruel companion. The rain stopped. The sun returned. The thirst returned. The hunger grew louder, screaming inside him. He had no food, nothing. until one morning a bird landed on the raft. A small bird, lost, exhausted. He moved slowly, heart pounding, hands shaking. With a desperate lunge, he caught it. He whispered an apology, tears streaming, and then he tore into flesh with trembling hands. It was raw, foul, but it was life. He swallowed with pain, but inside, a fire lit. He had tasted survival. He would not surrender. Not yet. Days turned into weeks. His skin peeled, his body wasted. He trapped fish with his bare hands, with makeshift hooks, tearing into their flesh raw. He drank their blood to survive, gagging, but knowing it was the only water his body would get. He grew thin, bones pressing against skin, eyes sinking deep. He spoke to himself, to the sea, to God. He wasn't sure who was listening anymore. Sometimes he thought the sea answered back. Sometimes he thought he saw people on the horizon boats, lights, voices. He waved, screamed, cried, but they never came. They were illusions, cruel tricks of his dying mind. By day 30, he was no longer the man who had entered that storm. He was an animal, a creature clinging to life with teeth and nails. His hands were torn, nails cracked, skin a map of wounds. His mind was fractured, reality and dreams blurring. He saw his mother in the stars. He heard his father in the waves. He thought he was home, eating, drinking, laughing. But then he would wake, and the sea was still there, always there. And yet, he refused to die. There is something inside the human spirit, something beyond flesh, beyond logic. It whispers even in the darkest moments. Hold on. Don't give up. He listened to that voice. Every time he thought of surrender, he remembered the faces of those waiting for him. He remembered laughter. He remembered love. And so he fought, every day, every breath, against a universe that wanted him gone. He was not supposed to survive, but still, he lived. Still, he endured. Still, he clung to life with nothing but willpower and scraps of flesh. And as he lay under the stars on day 40, barely breathing, eyes half closed, he whispered into the silence, "I will not die here." If you're still listening, if this story has held you so far, whisper in your heart, "I will not give up." Type it below. Say it out loud. Because the strength that kept him alive is the same strength inside you, and maybe that's the only reason he survived. 71 days alone adrift, day 41. The sea was calm that morning, but inside him there was no calm. His body was collapsing, his strength almost gone. Every movement hurt. His lips bled every time he spoke. His stomach had shrunk so small it barely growled anymore. It only ached, like a constant knife turning in circles. And his mind was slipping into places he had never been before. He woke that day not sure if he was alive or dead. His eyes opened to the blinding sun, but he couldn't tell if it was the sky or some final vision. He whispered words, but they had no meaning anymore. He looked down at his hands, cracked, bleeding, swollen. They didn't look like his hands. They looked like claws, like the remnants of some creature the sea had been slowly carving out of him. On day 43, he saw lights. He swore he saw them, flickering, glowing out there on the horizon. He screamed until his throat tore. He waved with what little strength he had, his arms shaking violently, tears pouring down his face. "Here, I'm here," he cried, but his voice was barely more than a whisper carried away by the wind. The lights faded. There was nothing, only water, only sky, only silence. He sank into despair. The ocean was not just water anymore. It was alive, a monster, a beast that wanted him. It toyed with him. gave him rain only when he was seconds from death, gave him fish only when he thought he would starve, gave him hope only to tear it away. And yet, he could not stop fighting. Something deep inside something he couldn't explain kept him alive. By day 45, sharks came. They circled his raft, black fins cutting through the blue. Their eyes were lifeless, merciless. They knew. They could smell his weakness. At night, they bumped the raft, shaking it, testing it. He clutched the edges, praying they would not flip him into the abyss. He barely slept. Every splash of water was a threat. Every shadow below was death, waiting. He tried to distract himself. He thought of his childhood, running barefoot in the grass. He thought of music, the sound of laughter, the touch of a hand he once loved. These memories were painful, but they were the only thing that reminded him he was still human. Without them, he would have lost himself completely. By day 48, hunger was no longer hunger. It was something darker. He craved things that didn't make sense. He dreamed of bread, but when he closed his eyes, he tasted sand. He dreamed of water, but when he reached for it, it burned like fire. He chewed on leather straps, on cloth, on anything he could find. It wasn't food, but it tricked his mind for a moment, gave him a few more minutes of peace. And then, on day 50, came the storm, the kind of storm that should have killed him. Black skies, waves taller than buildings, thunder that shook the earth. The raft tossed violently, water crashing over him, dragging him under again and again. He held on with everything he had left. His fingernails tore. His arms ripped. He swallowed salt water until he thought his lungs would burst. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his face twisted in terror. He screamed into the storm, "Is this it? Is this how I die?" But he didn't die. Not yet. When the storm finally passed, he was still there, clinging to the wreck of his raft, broken but breathing. His chest heaved with disbelief. He laughed, but it wasn't laughter. It was madness. He laughed because he was still alive when he shouldn't be. The sea had spared him again. Why? He didn't know. Day 52. His body was failing fast. He barely moved now. His eyes were hollow. His skin hung loose on bone. He had wounds that would not heal, sores that festered under the sun. Flies circled him even in the middle of the ocean. His mind wandered into delirium. He spoke to people who weren't there. He heard voices whispering his name. He saw his family standing on the raft, smiling, telling him to get up. He reached for them, but his hands closed on nothing. The raft was empty, always empty. And yet, every morning, he opened his eyes. Every morning, he pulled in another breath. Every morning, he told himself, not today, not yet. By day 55, the ocean offered him another test. A massive fish, bigger than anything he had seen before, swam close to the raft. His hands trembled as he reached for it, his knife dull, his body too weak. He struck once, twice, missing. On the third strike, he felt the blade sink in. Blood spilled into the water. Sharks appeared instantly, thrashing, tearing at the sea. He dragged the fish in with desperate strength, screaming with triumph as he fell over it. It was his victory, his feast. He ate until he could eat no more, his body rejecting and accepting at the same time. He was sick, but he was alive. And as the sharks tore the ocean around him into a frenzy, he looked into their dead eyes and whispered, "Not today. You don't get me today." The nights grew longer, darker. The stars no longer comforted him. They mocked him. They reminded him how small he was, how close he was to disappearing forever. But still, he held on. Still, he endured. Still, he whispered to himself, I will not die here. If you're still here, listening, then you know, this isn't just his fight. It's every fight. Every battle against despair, against the voice that says give up. If you feel that weight, if you've ever been close to letting go, whisper it with him. Not today. Type it below. Claim it. Because survival isn't just about the ocean. It's about life itself. 71 days, alone adrift, day 60. The line between life and death was paper thin now. His breath rattled in his chest. His pulse was weak, barely noticeable even to him. His body was a skeleton wrapped in burned, torn skin. Every wound stank of salt and infection. Every muscle trembled under its own weight. His mind was no longer sharp. It floated in and out, drifting like the waves carrying him. The ocean was endless. The sky was merciless. And the man was still alive. He whispered to himself again and again, one more day, just one more day. The words became his heartbeat, his mantra. When thirst clawed at his throat, he said it. When hunger twisted his gut, he said it. When fear closed in like a noose, he said it. Just one more day. Day 61. He woke to silence, and for a moment he thought it was over. His eyes opened slowly, his vision blurred, the world pale and distant. He lay there, watching the sun rise. The sky bled orange and red across the water. It was beautiful. Too beautiful for a place of death. And in that silence, something stirred in him. A memory, his mother's voice. Don't give up. He cried without sound, his tears mixing with the salt on his face. By day 63, the hallucinations became unbearable. He spoke to shadows. He heard his name called in the wind. He swore he saw ships passing, great vessels gliding across the horizon. He shouted until blood ran from his throat. He waved his arms like broken wings, but nothing came. Nothing ever came. The ocean swallowed every plea. Day 65. His raft was falling apart. The wood was rotting. The ropes fraying. Every wave threatened to tear it open. He patched it with scraps of cloth, with strips of his own clothes, with anything he could find. His hands bled. His fingernails split. He worked with the desperation of a man who knew that if it broke, he would sink and never rise again. By day 67, hope itself was poison. He no longer trusted his eyes. Every flicker on the horizon could be salvation or another trick. He wanted to believe. He wanted to scream, I'm here. But he was afraid of breaking his own heart. He curled into himself, whispering, don't hope. Just breathe. Just breathe. And then came day 69. The sea was calm. Too calm. His lips cracked, his eyes sunken, his body limp. He felt death close, closer than ever before. He thought of surrender. He thought of letting go, of sliding into the water and letting the sea finish what it had started. The idea felt like peace, sweet, endless peace. He closed his eyes, ready. But then he heard it. A sound. Distant, mechanical. A low hum across the horizon. His eyes shot open. His heart jolted. He pushed himself up with strength he didn't have. His vision swam, but he saw it far away. A shape. A ship. Real. Moving. He screamed. He waved his arms wildly. He tore at the air with his hands. Here. I'm here. His voice cracked, broke, but he kept screaming. He ripped off what was left of his shirt, waving it high, his body shaking. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me. The ship turned. It turned toward him. Day 70. He was barely conscious when they reached him. Strong hands lifted his weightless body. Voices shouted around him. Water was pressed to his lips. He drank like a man possessed. He cried like a child. He laughed, but it came out broken. He was safe. After 71 days lost at sea, he was alive. But survival is never simple. Lying in a bed, wrapped in blankets, fed and warm, he looked at his hands. The scars, the bones beneath skin, the memories that would never leave him. He realized survival wasn't just about living through the ocean. It was about carrying the ocean inside him forever. He had stared into death, and death had stared back. And yet, he had refused. He had whispered again and again, "Not today." And now, he had a story that would never die. If you've made it this far, you understand it wasn't just his fight. It's the fight of every human being. Against despair. Against the darkness that says give up. Against the voice that whispers it's over. If you've ever been there, if you've ever tasted that kind of pain, type it below. Not today. Whisper it. Claim it. Because survival is in you too. He almost died. He should have died. But he didn't. He survived 71 days adrift in the vast, merciless ocean. And his story is a reminder that even when the world wants to erase you, you can fight back. Not today. Not yet. Stay with us here in Survival Files, because there are more stories like his. More tailies the ocean tried to silence. More voices the wilderness tried to bury. And more survivors who refused to be forgotten. He woke to silence. Not the silence of the ocean, where every pause was a threat, but the silence of walls, of stillness, of safety. For the first time in 71 days, the ceiling above him did not shift, and the floor beneath him did not breathe. He was alive. He was rescued. Hands moved around him, steady, human, present. Water touched his lips, not from rain, not from desperation wrung out of canvas, but from a glass, clean and ordinary, the most miraculous thing he had ever held. He cried, not from pain, but because the world had become generous again. Doctors counted what the sea had nearly erased. His pulse, his weight, his breath. Every number was a proof of survival. They lifted him with care, wrapped him in blankets, reminded his body what warmth felt like. In the mirror, he saw a stranger. Sunken eyes, ribs carved like stone, skin burned and cracked by the merciless sun. Yet behind those hollow features, a fire still burned. The fire that refused to go out even when the waves tried to drown it. The first real meal was small, but to him it was a feast. Bread tasted like memory, fruit like a promise, rice like salvation. Each bite reminded him life had chosen him again. When they asked how he endured, he didn't speak of strength. He spoke of moments. One drop of rain, one fish, one prayer whispered into the dark. He said, I didn't survive 71 days. I survived one day 71 times. Outside, reporters shouted words like miracle, impossible, hero. He only shook his head. He wasn't a hero. He was proof. Proof that the human spirit can outlast hunger, fear, and even the silence of the sea. Proof that hope, however fragile, can keep a man alive when reason says he should be gone. He stood on land, legs trembling, heart steady. The ocean stretched beyond the harbor, vast and endless, but no longer his prison. He whispered to it, not in anger, not in hatred, but in respect. You tried, but I am still here. And as cameras flashed, as voices called his name, as strangers reached for his story, he raised his head. He survived not just for himself, but for all who wonder if they can endure. His story carried a message louder than any wave. You are stronger than you know. You can last longer than you believe. And even when the sea surrounds you, there is always a way back to shore. The screen fades to black. Text appears in bold, weathered letters, inspired by true events, dedicated to all who have faced the impossible. and survived.